Most people believe the biggest investing mistake when you're broke is picking the wrong stock, missing out on a crypto rally, or simply not starting early enough. But they are fundamentally wrong, because the real mistake is not mathematical, it is physical. The mistake is attempting to invest before you have achieved escape velocity, effectively trying to build a penthouse on a foundation that is currently sliding into a sinkhole. Because poverty is not just a lack of numbers in a bank account. It is a gravitational force that actively pulls every unit of energy you generate back down to zero. When you are broke, you are not operating in a vacuum where your choices have equal weight to those of a wealthy person. You are operating at the bottom of a gravity well where the physics of money are weaponized against you. And until you understand this force, every dollar you try to invest is just fuel being burned on the launch pad without ever lifting off. You look at financial gurus telling you to put $50 a month into an index fund, and you feel shame because you cannot do it. Or worse, you do it. And then an emergency forces you to liquidate it 2 months later at a loss, reinforcing the belief that the game is rigged, which it is, but not in the way you think. The game is rigged by physics, specifically the physics of escape velocity, which dictates that a rocket consumes 80% of its fuel just to get off the ground and break the atmosphere, leaving only 20% for the journey through space. Yet you are trying to cruise through space while you are still bolted to the ground, crushed by the atmospheric pressure of survival. To understand why investing while broke is a trap, we have to dissect the 5 specific loops of gravity that keep you poor. And we must do this with the cold, clinical precision of a surgeon. Because if you do not cut these loops, you will bleed out financially, regardless of which stock you buy. The first loop is what economists call the scarcity tax, but you know it as the reason you feel exhausted all the time, a phenomenon validated by Harvard researchers who found that the mere state of worrying about money drops your effective IQ by up to 13 points, which is equivalent to losing a full night of sleep every single day. This is the invisible tax that strips you of your cognitive bandwidth, forcing you to make short-term survival decisions that destroy your long-term prosperity, like buying the cheap boots that fall apart in 3 months, rather than the expensive ones that last a decade, a concept known as the Vimes Boots theory of unfairness. You are not stupid, you are cognitively overloaded, and when you try to invest while suffering from this scarcity tax, you are making complex financial decisions with a brain that is biologically in fight-or-flight mode. Flooded with cortisol, incapable of seeing the horizon because it is fixated on the tiger in the bushes, which in your case is the rent, the car repair, or the grocery bill. This cognitive depletion leads directly into the second loop, the dopamine trap, which is the biological mechanism that keeps you poor by tricking you into thinking spending is a form of therapy. When you are broke, your life feels out of control, and the human brain hates a lack of agency, so it seeks the quickest path to feeling powerful again. And in a consumerist society, the fastest way to assert power is to buy something. You buy the coffee, the takeout, the new gadget, not because you need it, but because the transaction releases a hit of dopamine that temporarily soothes the cortisol burn of the scarcity tax, creating a vicious cycle where you spend money to feel better about not having money. This is not a moral failing. It is biological warfare waged by a marketing industry that understands your neurochemistry better than you do, weaponizing your own reward system to keep you bleeding cash, ensuring that any capital you could have used for escape velocity is instead incinerated to purchase a fleeting moment of relief. You are trapped in a biological feedback loop where the pain of poverty triggers the behavior that ensures poverty continues, and trying to invest in this state is like trying to meditate while your house is on fire. You are not addressing the actual problem. The third loop creates a mathematical ceiling on your potential, known as the linear income trap, where you trade time for money in a world where the currency is being devalued faster than you can work. You believe that if you just work harder, pick up that extra shift, or get that small raise, you will eventually have enough to invest, but you are fighting against the exponential force of inflation and the systemic devaluation of labor. The system is designed to pay you just enough to keep you alive and working, but never enough to allow you to leave, creating a dynamic where your expenses rise in lockstep with your income, a phenomenon often called lifestyle creep, but which is actually just the cost of participating in society, adjusting to absorb your extra capital. You are running on a treadmill that is speeding up, and the investing mistake here is believing that you can outrun the treadmill by saving 5% of a linear paycheck that is losing 4% of its purchasing power every year. The math does not work because linear effort cannot catch exponential decay, and until you detach your income from your time or drastically lower your burn rate to create a surplus, you are simply feeding a machine that eats your life hours and gives you paper in return. Then we encounter the fourth loop, perhaps the most insidious because it is personal, social gravity, often described as the crab bucket effect. If you put a single crab in a bucket, it can climb out. But if you put a dozen crabs in, they will pull down any crab that tries to escape, not out of malice, but out of a desperate instinct to return the outlier to the group. When you are broke, your social circle is likely also broke, and they have constructed a worldview that validates their struggle, a shared narrative that the system is rigged or rich people are evil, which serves as a defense mechanism against their own lack of progress. When you try to invest or change your financial habits, you are implicitly challenging their worldview, signaling that escape is possible, which triggers their insecurity and causes them to pull you back down with comments like, "You're working too hard," or "Money changes people." We have mirror neurons that compel us to mimic the behavior of those around us to ensure social cohesion. So if your 5 closest friends are spending every weekend at the bar complaining about their bosses, your biology will drive you to do the same to maintain your tribal status. Breaking this loop requires a level of emotional ruthlessness that most people cannot stomach. The willingness to be lonely, to be misunderstood, and to be the villain in someone else's story of why they can't succeed. Finally, we arrive at the fifth and most mechanical loop, the compound void, which is the inverse of the wealth-building engine you are trying to construct. Einstein called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world, noting that he who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. And right now, if you are broke, you are almost certainly paying it. Debt is the anti-investment, a mathematical chain that grows heavier every day you do not break it, feeding on your future labor to pay for your past mistakes. The biggest investing mistake is buying an asset that returns 8% a year, while holding a liability that costs you 20% a year. A calculation that seems obvious on paper but is emotionally obscured by the desire to feel like you are building wealth. You are not building wealth. You are digging a hole with a shovel while someone else fills it with a bulldozer, And until you reverse the polarity of this equation, until you stop paying for your past and start paying for your future, you are mathematically doomed. These 5 loops, the scarcity tax, the dopamine trap, the linear income trap, social gravity, and the compound void, form the gravitational force that keeps you poor, and no amount of stock picking or crypto speculation can overcome them. So what is the solution? How do you generate the escape velocity needed to shatter these loops and reach the silence of financial freedom? The answer is not a hot stock tip. It is a radical lifestyle protocol I call monk mode. Monk mode is not about saving money. It is about saving your life by temporarily stripping away every variable that drains your energy, your capital, and your focus. It is a period of radical elimination where you cut your expenses to the absolute bone, not to be frugal, but to act as a fuel injector for your escape rocket. You must realize that you are in a war for your freedom, and in war, you do not indulge in luxuries, you survive, and you advance. To execute monk mode, you first have to declare martial law on your finances, freezing all non-essential spending to stop the bleeding from the dopamine trap. This means you stop eating out. You stop subscribing to entertainment. You stop buying clothes. And you embrace a level of boredom that will feel uncomfortable because it forces you to sit with your thoughts without the numbing agent of consumption. You're going to hack your dopamine system by replacing the cheap thrill of spending with the deep satisfaction of watching your bank balance. Stop dropping and start rising, rewiring your brain to find pleasure in security rather than novelty. Next, you must combat the scarcity tax by automating your survival. You create a rigid schedule for your meals, your work, and your sleep to reduce the number of decisions you have to make in a day. By wearing the same clothes and eating the same cheap, healthy meals, you free up the cognitive bandwidth you need to plot your escape, effectively artificially raising your IQ back to its baseline so you can see the chessboard clearly. You then address the social gravity by going dark, stepping back from the social circles that drain your wallet and your spirit, telling them you are focused on a project or taking a break, which is true, because the project is your life. You will feel lonely, but you must reframe this loneliness as solitude, the necessary quarantine required to heal from the virus of poverty thinking. During this period of isolation, you attack the compound void with everything you have, throwing every spare dollar at your high-interest debt with a ferocity that borders on obsession. You are not making minimum payments. You are killing the enemy that is eating your future. This is where the math starts to turn, where you stop the exponential decay and prepare for exponential growth. But monk mode is not just about defense. It is about preparing the offensive, specifically addressing the linear income trap by using your reclaimed time, the hours you used to spend scrolling, shopping, or socializing, to build a skill or a side income that is scalable. You use the internet, the greatest library in human history, to learn copywriting, coding, sales, or content creation, skills that allow you to detach your income from your time. You are building the engine that will carry you once you break orbit, turning your labor into an asset rather than a commodity. This is not about hustle culture. It is about physics. You are concentrating all your limited energy into a single point of impact to punch a hole in the ceiling of your current reality. Most people will not do this because it is hard, because it requires sacrificing the present for a future that is not guaranteed, but that is exactly why it works. The pain of monk mode is temporary. But the suffering of poverty is chronic, a low-level ache that never goes away until you die, unless you choose the sharp, acute pain of discipline to sever the connection. Imagine for a moment that you have done it, that you have endured 6 months or a year of this radical discipline, and you have reached escape velocity. You wake up one morning and the gravity is gone. The scarcity tax has been repealed because you have 6 months of expenses in the bank. So when the car breaks down, it is an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. The dopamine trap is disarmed because you no longer need to buy things to feel valuable. You know your value is in your discipline and your freedom. The social gravity can no longer touch you because you have outgrown the bucket, and you are now free to form new connections with people who are also flying, people who pull you up rather than drag you down. And the compound void has been replaced by the compound engine, where your money is finally working harder than you are, earning interest while you sleep, building a fortress of security that no one can take away. This is the destination, but you cannot buy a ticket there. You have to build the rocket. The biggest investing mistake is thinking you can skip the build, that you can gamble your way out of gravity. But the universe does not reward gamblers. It rewards architects. You have the blueprints now, you understand the physics, and you see the trap for what it is. The doors of the prison are not locked. They are just heavy, and it takes all of your strength to push them open. You can stay in the loop, exhausted, bleeding out your potential in $5 increments. Or you can enter monk mode, embrace the grind, and launch yourself into a life where you are the master of your fate rather than a victim of your circumstances. The choice is yours, but remember, gravity does not take a day off, and every day you wait, the pull gets a little bit stronger. Start today. Kill the debt, starve the distractions, build the engine. Your future self is begging you to make the sacrifice. Walk out.